On December 25th, 1991, the world watched something no one thought possible. The red flag, the symbol of a superpower, was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. To millions, it looked like a political collapse. To some, it looked like a victory in the Cold War. But the truth was hiding in the numbers. The Soviet Union didn't collapse because of a revolution. It didn't collapse because the West outsmarted it. It collapsed because it went broke, completely, absolutely, mathematically bankrupt. This is the real story, the story you don't find in political speeches. This is the economic autopsy of superpower. To understand how a nuclear giant died of poverty, we go back to 1965. Deep inside the frozen Siberian wilderness, Soviet geologists made a discovery that would change the fate of the USSR. The Samolar oil field. This wasn't just an oil field. It was a jackpot. At the very moment the Soviet economy was slowing down, this discovery poured oceans of black gold into the system. In the 1970s, global oil prices exploded. The OPEC embargo pushed prices to the sky. And the biggest winner was the Soviet Union. Billions of dollars of hard currency, real dollars, real marks, real yen, started flowing into Moscow. It felt like a miracle, but it was a trap. The oil money created an illusion that the system was working. The factories were inefficient. Who cares? Oil will pay for it. Agriculture couldn't feed the people. No problem. Buy grain from abroad. Military too expensive? Just sell more oil. The USSR became a petrostate dependent on a single resource. A superpower on the outside, but on the inside, economically fragile. By the early 1980s, something quietly changed. New oil from the North Sea and Alaska entered the market. Demand in the West dropped as cars and factories became more efficient. Prices began to wobble. At the same time, the Soviet agriculture system collapsed. Despite having some of the world's most fertile land in Ukraine, the USSR could not feed its own population. The collective farm system was so broken that nearly half of the harvested food rotted before reaching stores. So the USSR, a nuclear superpower, had to buy millions of tons of grain from the United States, the same enemy it competed against in every field. By 1982, almost half of all hard currency earnings were being used to buy food. The numbers were turning red, but the Kremlin didn't see the danger because they were addicted to oil money. Then came 1985. Saudi Arabia decided it would no longer restrict oil production. They opened the taps fully. The effect was immediate. Oil prices collapsed from $35 to $10 per barrel. For the USSR, this was not an economic problem. This was a death sentence. Half of their national income disappeared overnight. Imagine earning 100,000 rupees a month and suddenly earning 40,000 while your expenses remain the same. In Afghanistan, aid to communist allies, military spending, grain imports, subsidies, wages, everything was still there, but the money wasn't. When Mikhail Gorbachev took power in 1985, he knew the system was sick, but he didn't know it was terminal. He launched Perestroika, an economic reform plan. But reforms need money, and the oil crash had taken that money away. So Gorbachev made a choice that would define history. He borrowed. Western banks were happy to lend. After all, the USSR was a superpower. Superpowers don't go bankrupt, right? But the loans didn't go into factories or technology. They went into buying food and keeping shelves from becoming completely empty. It was survival money. Then Gorbachev made a decision that was morally right, but financially disastrous. He restricted vodka production to stop alcoholism. But vodka taxes were one of the biggest sources of government revenue, second only to oil. People didn't stop drinking. They just drank homemade moonshine. So the state's income collapsed even further. Sugar disappeared from stores. Everyone was buying it to make alcohol at home. The deficit exploded. By 1988, the government started printing rubles to pay wages. But the shops had no goods. This created monetary overhang. People had money, but nothing to buy. Queues stretched for hours. People stood in lines without knowing what was being sold. Anything could be valuable: bread, shoes, soap, toilet paper. This was not a superpower anymore. This was an economy in free fall. By 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and the Soviet trading system collapsed. Eastern European countries demanded dollars, not rubles. Inside the USSR, republics stopped sending tax money to Moscow. The central government had no income. Gold reserves were secretly flown to London and Zurich to pay for basic imports. So much gold was sold that global prices fell. Trust, the foundation of any economy, was gone. In 1990, foreign ships carrying meat and butter refused to dock until payments were made. But the USSR couldn't pay. Checks bounced. Debt crossed $70 billion. Factories paid workers in whatever they produced: tires, tools, glass, anything. People bartered items on streets for food. The ruble was finished. The real currency became the US dollar. In August 1991, hardliners attempted a coup. But you cannot overthrow economics with tanks. The coup failed. By December, the USSR was out of money, literally. Only around 240 tons of gold remained. Printing presses ran non-stop, but the money was worthless. And on December 25, 1991, Gorbachev resigned. Not because he lost a war, but because he had lost the ability to pay salaries. The Soviet Union didn't fall. It went bankrupt. Russia inherited everything: the nuclear weapons, the UN seat, and 100% of the debt. This debt crushed the new Russian economy in the 1990s. Hyperinflation wiped out life savings. Poverty exploded. It took 26 years for Russia to finally pay off the last Soviet debt, a payment made in 2017. The fall of the USSR is a warning for every nation. Natural resources do not make you rich. Diversification does. Real production does. The Soviet Union confused oil wealth with economic strength, and it paid the ultimate price. An empire does not collapse when its armies are defeated. It collapses when it can no longer afford bread.